Now let's talk about renting with bad credit. So if you want to rent with bad credit, you want to get an apartment or you want to get any kind of other rental, here are the top hacks I want you to really pay attention to, okay? The first thing you want to do here is that you want to find a landlord who doesn't need a credit check. The thing is that not all landlords will check your credit before actually giving you the key to their apartment, okay? So if you have poor credit, if your credit score is around 300 or you have no credit at all, and you actually want some kind of if you want an apartment, ask yourself if the landlord can actually maybe less concerned about your credit score. Usually, if you think rural and suburban areas, you might actually find a landlord who can be accommodating. So the first thing is that you want to really find a landlord who's very flexible when it comes to your FICO score. Now, beware of landlords who make it too easy for you to get an apartment. If your landlord doesn't want much information about you, you may be walking into a rental scam or an unfavorable rental solution. So always perform your due diligence when responding to a rental to a rental let's say notification. Number two, you want to ask a real estate agent about your options. Okay, the thing is that if you are trying to rent with bad credit, it's better to reach out to a specialist, especially a specialist that has lots of knowledge about your rental market, especially agents who work with landlords or property managers. Okay, so that's something to really think about. And you can contact a brokerage and ask to speak with an agent with experience working with landlords. So when you find the right agent who does, ask about your options or if they know of any apartment that doesn't need a credit check. Okay, and also it could be a good idea to ask if the real estate agent knows a landlord who is willing to work with you. So when I say an agent, you have to make sure the agent knows your local market because when it comes to real estate, every market is different. So the agent has to be aware of the trends in your local market. If you're trying to really rent with bad credit, you need to also think about proving your income and savings. Okay, so the thing is that when you have bad credit, landlords are concerned about your ability to pay. Right? They're concerned about your ability to stay true to the rental agreement. So they're asking questions about your financial ability. They're asking themselves questions about your ability to even pay the rent as agreed upon. So the best way for you to really assuage their concerns is to show that you do have good financial stability. So you have to prove your financial trustworthiness. And so when you have a low credit score, what happens here is that you got to be prepared to use other ways to show your ability to repay. So the ability to pay, not to repay, your ability to pay. So you can either show a high income or high savings amounts relative to the monthly rental payments. So ideally, you can show both so that you are able to convince the landlord, the official landlord, that you are actually you're actually in good financial in a good financial situation. If you have credit cards, you can also show a credit line available to you as extra security. Okay, so for example, if you have a credit line of $10,000 on a card with a zero balance, you can show your prospective landlord that you have an extra $10,000 to fall back on for other costs. Now, this strategy may work for some landlords and not for others. Okay, so one thing for sure, you have to understand that the landlord that you are talking to may be also maybe amenable to your situation or not. It really depends. Okay, so one thing I want to show is that when I say prove your income and savings, it's all about the proportions. It's all about the context that you have. So if your rent is $1,000, for instance, showing that you have a savings of 40,000 or 30,000 or 20,000 can really help a little bit. Okay, sort of convince the landlord that, hey, listen, you could be a good candidate for tenants. So if you're trying to rent with bad credit, you want to explain your poor credit history. So the thing is that when it comes to credit history, there is an explanation for everything, right? There is a reason why you got the bad credit score in the first place. And so if you filed for bankruptcy versus let's say you're not paying your credit card bills, basically those are two different situations. Those are two different scenarios that could lead to bad credit, but they're not the same, right? If you filed for bankruptcy, the a landlord might look at this as more serious than if you were, let's say, if you were to miss a few credit card payments, right? It's all about the context. So be honest about your poor credit history, okay? And basically, you want to understand that basically when you're explaining your poor credit history, you're not just being trustworthy here. It's also about being reliable. Okay, so you want to show personal responsibility, and you also want to show accountability. So depending on your location, you may want to discuss it with your potential landlord before submitting your application or presenting a letter along with your other application materials. Okay, so you want to present your credit history with confidence and clarity. It's not uncommon to experience a credit hiccup. Everybody goes through that. I mean, not everybody, but you might go through that. You're not the first person to go through it. You don't need to explain everything, just enough to convey that you know what the problem is or was, and how you have and continue to address the problem. Right? It's all about accountability. It's all about responsibility. Okay, and be ready to answer questions from your landlord, because once you actually present your credit history, if you have questions, be be ready to answer them, and answer them to the best of your ability. Okay, and so if the landlord has questions, it's a good sign, because it's a good sign that they are open, or like they're open to taking you as a renter. They want to understand what happened. If you're trying to rent with bad credit, you want to highlight how you are addressing credit issues. See, the whole thing is that with your credit history is history for a reason. Okay, it happens in the past, so you want to explain what you're doing today to address what happened in the past. Okay, so if you have a good solution in place, if you have a good action plan, and the landlord sees that you are able to actually go through it, and you have actually gone through it, or on the way to actually addressing those issues, then that's really good. It shows responsibility once again. It shows accountability. Okay, so be sure to explain how you're addressing the problem. Okay, so a great way to do this is that you can show how your credit score is already increasing. Let's say you have poor credit, right? But your credit was actually 300 6 months ago, and nowadays is like 500. So you actually gained 200 points in 6 months. That's good progress, and so you want to highlight that. Okay, and also you can do this by setting up. You can actually register with a credit tracking agency or a service, and those some of those companies, they don't charge anything at all. So this is something to really think about. For instance, many credit card companies already offer a credit tracking for their customers. Okay, so if you're working with a credit counselor or a credit repair company, you can also show how long they've been working with you, or they've been working with you on certain issues. So if you're not yet addressing your credit problems, it's really time for you to start. Okay, so no matter what your score is right now, improving your credit as soon as possible can really help you, especially if you're looking for an apartment in a pretty competitive area. Like in the in a big city, things might be a little complicated. But if you are in a rural town, if you are in a rural area, such as like either a rural or a suburban, you might be more lucky. You might be luckier when it comes to your rental applications. So if you think about renting with bad credit, you have to understand that you may be asked to pay more upfront, or at least consider paying more upfront. Okay, so if you have the cash to pay more upfront, this can be a useful tactic to secure a rental when you have poor credit. Okay, so this is kind of cool. One option is offering to pay more than the usual first month plus deposit, such as paying 3 months rent upfront. Okay, this shows your landlord that you are both serious and responsible, considering that it takes budgeting skills to build that kind of savings. Alternatively, you can provide a larger security deposit, depending on like if your state and local laws allow this practice. So when negotiating rent, stay positive and professional. Many, but not all, landlords or investors, they are likely interested in getting good deals and maintaining positive cash flow. So show that you care about their pain points and their bottom line. So this may go a long way in transforming their impression of you from a person with a bad credit score to a renter who wants them to be profitable. So if they're not interested in upfront payments, ask them what would change their mind. You never know, okay? It's all about negotiating. It's all about having a negotiation attitude. You also want to think about offering to have automatic payments for rent. So setting up autopay for your rent payments is a simple but effective way to convince a landlord that you mean business. So you'll need to actually show that you have the funds, and that you will also need to use a system that's very easy to present to the landlord. For example, if you set up an automatic payment through your bank, you should present both the receipts and show that you have plenty of money in your bank account to ensure that you can make those payments. Okay. And your landlord actually may have a preferred payment method. So ask them how they would like to receive it, the automatic payment. So the thing is, if you can show that you are very serious about the automation when it comes to monthly payments, this could be really good for you. Also, if you think about renting with bad credit, you also want to showcase positive references from previous landlords. This can be very helpful to you, especially when it comes to showing responsibility, right? Because your bad credit is already acting as tarnishment on your credit history. So you want to show more positivity, more positive references. So basically, a glowing reference from another landlord or several is actually a great way to prove that you are a safe bet as a tenant. Of course, this only works if you have a good relationship with a past landlord. And if you do, simply reach out to your landlord and ask for a letter of recommendation. And while you are at it, you can ask your old landlord if they have a rental unit that would be suitable for your new apartment. You never know if they may have something opening up in the area you want with all the features you need, right? It's all about asking for options. And because they already know and trust you, you may be able to get into your new place without jumping through so many hoops. Another way to actually rent with bad credit is to actually be a co-tenant, okay? So renting with a co-tenant like a roommate is actually a great way to strengthen your application. Just be sure that your roommate can show the credit worthiness that you like, because otherwise, why would you go through the same process and with someone who has the same problem like you, right? So having a roommate may be helpful for people who have, let's say, a high income with poor credit. And you should still be prepared, though, to offer, like you should be able to offer a letter of explanation and recommendations from past landlords. So even though your roommates actually could be, even though having an apartment with a roommate may be your ideal situation, there are so many positives to consider, really. So your roommate will certainly lower your overall housing cost. since you'll be splitting rent and utilities together. Okay, so this is kind of cool. Just make sure that you want to take your time to find the right roommate for your needs. If you're trying to rent with bad credit, also think about using a cosigner. So if you have a low credit score, use a cosigner. A cosigner, sometimes called a guarantor, is the person who agrees to take financial responsibility if you fail to pay rent. So typically, a parent or other family member acts as a cosigner, and so those are some important things to keep in mind when using a cosigner, though. Okay, first, your cosigner will need to show a good, ideally very good credit score of their own. They'll need to show proof of income because many landlords want to see a cosigner who makes at least 80 times the monthly rent amount in yearly income. In other words, if your rent is 1,000, the landlord might ask for someone who makes at least $80,000 a year. Also, you are entering into a financial relationship with your cosigner. If things go wrong, such as you defaulting or on rent payments, your relationship may be strained. So choose and act wisely when working with a cosigner to get an apartment or rental home. Okay. The good news is that so long as you are a responsible tenant, you should be able to build a positive relationship with your landlord by the end of your lease. That means you may be able to forego using your cosigner when renewing your lease or get actually a great reference from your landlord for your next apartment. And finally, you want to establish credit if you don't have any. So, as you're trying to get a new apartment with bad credit, you also need to think about building credit, okay? And building credit just means that you want to start somewhere. You can start with having a secured credit card. Or you can try to get a secured loan. The thing is that basically you want to start somewhere, and the earlier you start, the better. Even if you are at 300, like no credit score, you can still build your credit within 3 to 6 months, and you can actually gain like 100 points in 6 months, actually in 3 months, actually. Okay, that's totally possible. You have lots of options out there, from secured credit cards to credit building, to credit credit builder loans to anything. You have lots of options. As a matter of fact, you have services nowadays that will report your rent, your utility payments to the credit bureaus. So that's really good. So here's an epilogue into this conversation. I gave you 11 top options to actually rent with bad credit. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.